Hello, and welcome again to the Illuminators Forum, episode number 7. This is a project of the Immersive Learning Research Network's State of XR and Immersive Learning Scanning and Reporting effort for 2025, with our report coming out in the spring of 2026. Today we have a special guest, Fridolin Wild from Open University in the United Kingdom. And he's going to walk us through the amazing results that we had with our Circle of Scholars group on a vision towards 2035. Um, Hi, Fridolin, welcome.
Good to see you, Jonathan. Thanks for the invitation.
Yeah, this is great. As we do, the Immersive Learning Research Network's effort here on sense making of what's going on the emerging and near horizon in this space of immersive experiences. We try to shine lights of immersive learning on the 2025 for iLRN's efforts, and then bring in guiding lights such as Fridolin and others to help us make sense of those. So what's emerging for 2026 is a bit of a focus for today. At the beginning, this special session will talk about some of these emerging signals that are happening. We're not even quite 1 month into the year, but we've got a few signals that we can take a look at. Then we'll transfer over to Fridolin to discuss the vision for 2035 and the results of the workshop that was ran recently with some of the members of our Circle of Scholars advisory group. And then finally, we'll wrap up with more discussion on how to translate some of that. So, how do we make this vision a reality in a way that is in a position the way that we would want if we were to steward immersive learning as a discipline and as a community. So that's our format for today. Um, so first off, if I may, we've got a few signals of immersive learning. Um, this was kind of a carryover, some of it from 2025. But we're moving from a focus on content and platforms more to conditions and infrastructure. We're moving from, apps and looking more at kind of interconnected ecosystems and orchestrating and coordinating those, and moving from performance to more participation. This is the iterative and interactive nature of XR that's really starting to grow. So those are some of the big ones. A couple of highlights on this trend that we're seeing. There was in the fall of 2025, we had a theater with no stage, no stage hands, no actors. It was all completely done by game controllers and people in the audience moving, telling the asses, the donkeys, what to do, and kind of changing the outcome of the play. This was interactive theater by Patrick Blencarn and Milton Lim in Vancouver, Washington. And this idea, you're starting to see this in other ways, is that if you remove the performer, that is the teacher or the guide or the narrator, how do we scaffold those environments so that we can provide experiences with coherence, experiences where the learning outcomes are what we intended in the first place? And where does authority live? Is it in the people who are creating the performance, co-creating the performance by playing it? Is it in the designers who are setting up the container and making decisions about what people can and can't choose? Or are there shared norms that are being uh, understood and decided on by uh, cultures or institutions or people at large, um, in order to steward these in a way that that makes sense. What do you think, Fridolin? Anything interesting on uh, pique your mind on this one?
Yeah, lots of beautiful donkeys to see.
Right.
No, I think that really hits a nerve. The change from kind of monolithic delivered systems to ecosystems to how can we make this a bit more open and self-organized? I think that's really where we are. It speaks from the soul. Yeah.
It really does. And these things, these signals, may not be apparent to everybody all at once because they're just emerging. But if you look around, you're starting to see a lot more of this. Those of us that are in this field are starting to see this kind of change. But as illuminators, we'd like to kind of amplify that these signals are happening to others and elsewhere. Um, on another front, Meta has been in the news quite a bit in our field, having laid off about 10% of their workforce. While at the same time, there's a couple of other things going on in the Meta universe. They just announced their immersive web SDK, so people can start to build and create uh, environments on their WebXR platforms. And this is because you're starting to, you're starting to see the web doing the real work of being the place where these kinds of virtual worlds and environments are being created. And so less of the headset, more on the web. And this is a good thing in some ways. It's also full of constraints and challenges and other issues for developers and designers and others. But you're seeing this real tooling of WebXR starting to happen in earnest with this particular thing. Um, Meta also updated their work environment for Horizons and announced that as of February 20th of next month, 2026, their Meta Horizon managed services will no longer be available for purchase, but you can download and access those and manage them yourselves. So it'll no longer be Meta standing in the middle to manage Horizon workforce applications, but it's something that, again, ecosystems internally can start to build those out themselves. This raises sort of questions about what is the long-term operating model for immersive learning within institutions? If institutions are now responsible for integrating all of these decisions internally and managing them themselves, who's going to own that maintenance? How is that identity and the life cycle going to be handled? And you can imagine there's probably going to be quite a bit of differences across this landscape, as certain management styles are different than others. Some institutions in some parts of the world might be able to take this on very quickly and make it very user friendly. Others might have a lot of issues about security and who's going to do all this work, and so you can see some uneven landscapes potentially popping up. And then it also asks this question: are we building a field on shifting sand if we don't design for vendor churn? I mean, this industry with Apple, with Meta, with Google, these big players that are kind of developing and creating immersive learning capacity and systems. Um, how do we as a field um, anticipate for this when things cut off? What do we do? How do we maintain continuity of learning and practice and sharing knowledge? It's as well as just the basic operations of actually being able to handle what happens when someone shuts off the spigot. So it's lots of questions. Another thing that we're seeing in 2026 early is that haptics continues to move from wow, this is amazing. Wouldn't it be great if we could have this in our immersive learning experiences? And it's moving more into the workflow. You're getting less expensive and more reliable applications of haptics. So it's becoming much less of a one-off and more of something that people are seriously starting to embrace. The questions, of course, for institutions and for immersive learning researchers, designers, and educators is, where does this tactile fidelity genuinely become of impact for learning in what situations, whether it's, walking up to there's a fire in the building and you're feeling the door and you can feel the heat coming through the door. You're training someone, touching the doorknobs and making sure that they're not hot, pressure. There's many different kinds of situations and workforce skills that require the use of the body, not just your decision making and your thinking. What is the minimum viable haptics that we would need? At what cost and how it would be delivered in order for us to be able to create high impact training at scale? So these are questions as haptics starts to come on to the scene. So I just wanted to kind of preface our special guests' work today with some of these early signals of 2026. And now it is my great pleasure to welcome Fridolin Wild. He's a member of our Immersive Learning Research Network Circle of Scholars. He's a professor of technology enhanced learning. He's a long-standing iLRN contributor. And he recently convened a Vision 2035 workshop. Pardon the slide error there. I'm sorry about that. And he's here today to share his collective insights on where immersive learning might be headed based on our Circle of Scholars contributions in this workshop and what it might require. So I'm going to stop my sharing and I'm going to turn it over to Fridolin. Welcome,
Yeah.
buddy.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for the kind words. Also, should of course come with the limitation very clearly expressed that this inevitably has to be wrong for two reasons. One is it depends on whether we really put the effort behind where we could be heading, where we think we should be heading today. May turn out a couple of years down the line, this is not the right direction and we change it
That's
and we
right.
never end up there. Or secondly, even if we're right, quite likely it wouldn't feel like how we can express these things today. The lingo around these things will change quite dramatically, and therefore I apologize for the future already. Inevitably, this is probably a bit wrong. It still is helpful because it will help guide our discussion of where we want to go. And with a bit of luck, we will actually achieve it, or large parts of it, because I think that's the big advantage of standing on the shoulder of giants. Lots of people in prominent functions across the immersive learning research network expressed the same interest, the same direction that we're aggregating here.
Mhm.
At the beginning of it, we also use the exercise as an opportunity to shape up our shared understanding of what makes good immersive learning research. And I put these together with three images. So this is the first one, and I thought I'll ask you, and mind it, there is no wrong answer. Do you see here in this picture anything that you would say is a core purpose of immersive learning research?
Wow. Well, I mean, I see multiple sensorial, the big ear, the brain, I perhaps the walls have ears, says Eric. That's great. perhaps some misinformation with the demon outfit there. Looks like they're conspiring. Um, some ways to dissuade people of some less than true ideas. Look, maybe data on the bottom left, making sense of complex information or visualizing things in a different way with charts and graphs. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Wow. Wow. I think you covered probably most of them now already. And we all know that we agree on those. The ones that we aggregated as kind of a guiding set of six were, of course, we're dealing with this new embodied spatial learning beyond the flat screens. So that's maybe a little bit visible here in this kind of opening that you see in the background and stepping out there through that flat opening into a three-dimensional world. So that's at the heart of it, of course, of immersive learning. But then there are lots of softer criteria or maybe more professional criteria here around the focus. So we should do this with a sense of empowerment, focus on well-being, on human development, and any technology rollout that doesn't resort to that it will fail inevitably.
mhm,
Um, the data corner down there has a lot to do also with rigorous transferable evidence um, that we, of course, in research should focus on. Um, Here, down here, we had a corner looking at the social impact, guide innovation towards social impact.
yeah,
The ear, I think, stands pretty much, yeah, for the kind of who's listening in.
yeah, all right.
Let's do this ethically. Let's be frank. There is a chance that these new senses that we have everywhere can also be detrimental to purpose and can be abused criminally or otherwise. And that needs reflection, that needs a dialogue, that needs maybe also a redefinition of what is acceptable and what not. And of course, maybe I should have mentioned that at the beginning. It is all about understanding the learning mechanisms that are associated with this. So these were the six purposes that came in the aggregation out. There's a lot more detail, of course, but
Mhm.
that's pretty good. We asked two more questions. This is the second one. What makes good edtech research? And if we look at anything pops to mind, Jonathan?
The transparency, the fidelity, good communication or strategic communication. I see
Yeah,
lots of people involved here.
of course.
Openness, I would say, right? An open society for being able to share and have it be reliable. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So all echoed in here in the five kind of quality criteria, if you want. So the inclusive, for example, lots of people, ethical, human-centered, also indicated by here someone with a disability,
Yeah.
uh, is of course something that makes good research theoretically grounded and mechanisms explicit,
Mhm.
problem-led, pedagogically justified, so not novelty-centric, contextually valid and cumulative, building on prior research, methodologically rigorous and pluralistic was also echoed, especially in the multi-viewpoints.
Mhm.
Yeah, so lots of stuff,
Excellent.
but it doesn't come without risks. So the seven apocalyptic risks that we have
Yeah.
dug out are represented in this picture, and I'm
Um,
sure you spot some of them. Might have come from you in the first place anyway. So
These are awesome.
yeah,
How fun. I mean, the skeleton, death, the children being used and imprisoned. That's
yeah,
horrific.
yeah,
Fire and burning and, destruction, maybe for its own sake.
yeah,
And
yeah,
the headset driving the AI or the technology actually driving things.
And riding over this person here on the ground. Yeah, yeah. Or here people like zombies emerging from the ground. So the seven we identified in the aggregation is
Yeah.
I alluded to that a little bit earlier already. Technocentric, novelty driven, that's not it. Immersive learning is a field that has not just to do with technology, it has to do with cognition and learning and how we make that happen. And quite often we do not spend enough time in optimizing things. And maybe sometimes it would be better not to jump on the next big thing, but instead get old technology right and to fruition. Of course,
Yeah.
conflicts of interest. Yeah, introducing bias, commercial capture as well, exclusion harm, the person riding over someone on the ground, neglect of well-being. There is a danger to it. With everything new come new risks. Uncritical and unethical use of AI and XR.
Yeah.
Lack of interdisciplinarity and social grounding. So if we're not connecting all the viewpoints in, we risk falling short. Methodological dogma, weak science, erosion of human agency, pedagogy, and care. This XR as a learner in a box or a teacher in a box is certainly one of the key risks that we see in the field. Yeah,
Mm.
we talked a lot about future research against the backdrop of past research in our survey, in our Delphi study rounds that we had in the workshop. And the way we investigated this together in our Circle of Scholars community, it allowed us to extract a little bit kind of future vision minus promising things and past research, what we have achieved as a field. And I think anyone who sees this and looks at the topics will recognize what we have actually done. We have a lot of progress about learning mechanisms and experience, a lot about pedagogy and design rules. Technology-centric topics like natural interaction have been dominant forces, or character models, non-player characters in various different applications, classically, as always, with new stuff from the STEM education domains, but also moving in many others like medical, measurement and evidence. What maybe we have been falling a bit short of still when we look at what we know already now, where we see promising results, but it's not quite fully there. We still don't fully understand how to make learning gains happen and how to connect that in particular with design choices. We have a tremendous opportunity like any other field with the changes of AI, and I'm not so much only talking about conversational AI or agentic AI. I think there's something truly novel emerging also in the space of generative 3D, and we'll come to that. Stronger process models, initial work about embodiment, the value propositions, investigating them. A bit of social XR is on the rise, clearly.
Mm.
What maybe we kind of, in most contexts, would consider as largely done there are these does XR work at all studies. We don't really probably need more of those. Short interventions, presence as the sole outcome and so on. But some other things still remain completely unresolved, like transfer, generalization, walking from that single context to the generalization, how we can learn in other fields from that, and things like that. Longitudinal effects. There is not a single person on this planet that has grown up with this technology their whole life, so this is going to keep us busy for quite a while, I suspect.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there are a lot of things staying unresolved, and now I'm kind of surprised that I'm jumping through the wrong presentation. Let me just open um, the right one. Huh. Do, do, do.
That's a head full of things there to think about. and correlate, orchestrate many concerns for us to work on, and you can see really ostensibly together. These are the complexity of these things are there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
Got it?
Let me just reshare and we can jump a bit more through this. So, um, yes. So jumping to maybe the overview on the whole thing, how we organize this. I think it's nice to look at the whole process because effectively what we have sought to do here with the Circle of Scholars is a Delphi study. So a kind of future forecasting study, as you see here. In the olden days, you would go to the Oracle of Delphi and would ask for advice, and then there would be a priestess sitting, originally young women, and then later, when that turned out to be a bit too problematic, they weren't necessarily young. Um, over a hole in the ground where smoke from a volcano would come up, and then they would say something incohesive like us, and somebody would interpret it. No, we we do a modern process of that, of course. We discussed in a small round what we try to achieve, a research vision for 2035, and who we want to invite. We pitched that to our circle of scholars, then went into a first survey-based round to explore and collect feedback from 9 questions, which resulted in 554 items that we got. Then synthesized this also with the help of AI, not the hallucinatory AI that just makes something up from the backdrop of a large language model. No, only with light touch cleaning or aggregation, where we were basically working with those survey inputs. Then we fed this into a second round, into a workshop format where we sat together with a large whiteboard using moderation cards that came out of this synthesis, arranged them, broke them apart, put them back together into future scenarios, and then wrote a consolidated report, which then had a consensus review again with revisions, and soon will go to publication. And yeah, you want to come in here, Jonathan?
Yeah, quite reflective or aligned with the uh, Delphi method or modified Delphi method that we've engaged in the last three reports for the Immersive Learning Research Network's State of XR and Immersive Learning report. So this is really great to have this method laid out, and it's a great method. If for those of you who have not participated in a Delphi style survey, and Fridolin did a fantastic job organizing this and managing. Uh, it was not quite like it was more like juggling bumblebees than it was in herding cats, even harder than herding cats. Working with this circle of scholars, you did a fantastic job online working with us on through these rounds. So
Oh,
yeah,
thank you.
exciting
Very
stuff.
kind. No, it is exciting, and these methodologies are very useful. So they have the advantage that they take individual viewpoints, but then bring them back to joint spaces where you can discuss about it and go away again, kind of balancing the kind of individual expert input versus groupthink,
Mhm.
and resulting in in a nice methodology, in a nice
Yeah.
convergence. So, excuse me, 1 second. Where's my mute button? Couldn't find it now. Oh, there it is. Yeah, still have. I'm still suffering from a flu on the way out.
Oh,
Right.
not
So
inflection points. I thought we were going to talk about inflection points. Haha.
yeah. So when we look at the real content, away now from the shared understanding of what makes good iLRN research, the inflection points are basically the synthesis of what we see today that may set us on a different path in the future. And we
Hmm.
looked at two things in particular. We looked at changes in education and we looked at advances in technology. So the changes in education that may have defined already where we end up in 2035 are those eight that we have in front of us. And I think we all can relate with these. Through the advent of AI, assessment is in crisis. We may have to innovate the way we assess performance, the way we assess um, students. And that certainly has to do with the capabilities that we put into the hands of everyone worldwide to generate text, generate answers, generate essays, and so
Hmm.
on. Which is particularly tricky when we are currently still in a cost crisis where higher education funding has been in crisis for a couple of years. The amount of funding available to higher education and research is too low and would need to increase or at least become more efficient if there are any efficiency gains to get. Not quite sure about that. Um, the teacher capability is before like after a bottleneck, but in the times now where tools are advancing fast, really, really fast, it is a real problem. At the same time, there are some positive changes as well that are happening. More than ever, we have education beyond physical boundaries.
Yeah.
Learning is much more a lifelong thing and a mixed cohort, age groups wise thing than ever. It's much more a kind of transnational, global teaching than ever. It's at the same time also, thanks to AI, much more personalized than ever. Maybe cohorts are a thing of the past, and we can really do individualized trajectories in the
Right.
future for everything.
Yeah.
Uh, Inclusion is no longer optional. Inclusion is a must. And that applies particularly to the field of immersive learning, that while in the past you would get away with doing this for a targeted group, nowadays it needs to be available for everyone.
That's right.
Hybrid is a new default. We've all gotten used to that. Digital literacy is now spatial. So these are all eight big changes that we see already today that have an impact. But if we look further at the indicators of technology advances available, then we have these 10 that we think sets us already slightly on a different track, on a different trajectory. Um, AI is written over many of them. Generative AI has also started to enter the world of immersive. We're going slowly to generative 3D, even if not with the same successes yet as we have for just text or just images or videos. Conversational presence has been changed in many directions. Two of them in particular are telepresence is better and on the rise, and we can see how this adds something, how we can get rid of the Zoom fatigue, as Jeremy Balanson, one of our collaborators here, has
Yeah.
so nicely expressed in the past. Of course, also at the same time, where humans are not available, AI can be an interesting conversational partner. And yeah, AI has arrived inside immersion. Um, we have mobile XR at scale now. It's no longer an issue when we meet students on whichever level. Most of the devices now are um, compatible with VR, AR, XR, whereas 5 years ago there was still a major issue. Affordable XR goes mainstream. Device costs for smart glasses and VR goggles are coming down more and more. We look at a rosy trajectory there. Um, Spatial platforms may really have an opportunity to replace the standard flat systems that we have. Learning analytics increasingly have capabilities for multimodal as well, presentation trainer feedback, things like that. This is all amazing. interaction, and that's the precursor to this, obviously, has become more embodied than ever. Hand tracking, computer vision, other senses are on the rise. At the same time, um, I think, been through the trough of disillusionment and are slowly arriving on a productive plateau post-hype. And things are working and not overselling. And yeah, a clear focus in the future might be um, shifting more towards equity and and that. Yeah, so these were a lot of the things that we see today already that we think put us onto a different trajectory for the future. So what are the possibilities that we iLRN fellows see? And again, we followed both the social societal demand or challenge view and the technology view, and these are the ones we came up with. So there is a good possibility that any of these 10 become quite decisive in what we should be focusing on. I don't think I need to stress that with my fellow American that our interest in truth is renewed as ever, and any scientist would of course have a commitment to that, but it is also challenged because manipulative technologies are so much on the rise, and misinformation is a real problem. Um, Accessibility, equity, um, are needed to keep us together as society and leave no one behind. And um, yeah, that certainly strives also into this dimension of ethics, privacy, bodily autonomy, where we have real challenges to deal with. So if we want to make use, for example, of this new multimodal data, what is acceptable to do, what not? How can we guarantee privacy and not open a loophole where we have cameras exposed in our homes to everyone? The AI revolution maybe creates also a significant fallout employment-wise, at least if you look at studies like the IMF study. And we need to deal with that. And I truly believe that XR is the answer to this. We can help with rapid reskilling and adult education and capacity building at scale. We can be the answer to dealing with that fallout, possibly. Um,
Yep.
Digital well-being, sustainability are big challenges. Yeah, care, culture, community, global inequality are things that we need to solve. Research integrity is maybe connected also to the truth topic, is under pressure. The erosion of expertdom is something that we all have experienced, and we need more resilience to that. We need to foster more resilience, and we need to have more responsible AI. So these are, I think, the big societal challenges. So does that resonate with you, Jonathan? Or yeah.
Absolutely. It's also, this increasingly complex, increasingly fast-paced, and increasingly interconnected situations. All of these things kind of relate to each other, and the pace of our innovation and the need for us to be able to um, roll these out so that we can ensure access and capabilities and um, have good conversations that can transfer not only to one another but to the day after tomorrow when things have changed even more dramatically. So this is really does resonate quite a bit. You've laid this out beautifully.
At the beginning of our conversation here, you laid out a couple of technical trends as well. If we just recap them, they are of course listed here as well.
Yep.
Just fishing for them. We had world modeling. There should be a card somewhere. Yes, here, democratized world building
Oh
is a
yeah,
technology possibility that we saw.
that's right.
Obviously. And not quite sure where we would put haptics mainly because it touches into a couple of them.
Yeah, the
But I think
multimodality there.
Yeah, multimodal is probably where I would put it, or wearables,
Right.
because it's not just smart glasses, it's gloves and things as well.
Right.
And maybe
Immersive.
more crazy things like neuro interfaces one
Yeah.
day in a time frame of 10 years. Who knows? These are certainly things that we see. I think it might be a bit too much for here, so I'll just focus on a subset of them.
Thank you.
Um, Agentic AI, I think we haven't stressed enough yet
No.
that the possibility is there with large language models and their extending capability and enterprise interoperability, the service orientation coming slowly into that field, that we can actually operate through AI various other services, and they can help us with not only booking our next holiday, but maybe planning in when we need to have touch points with our human tutors and
Right.
alerting someone if we have if we're really down in our learning progress and
Yeah.
things like that. So maybe also stretching a little bit to increase possibilities to build flow machines where things just work in a Xedimihali sense of yeah, where great challenge and great capability come together. That's where we strive, and otherwise we slowly get a bit bored, and if we get frustrated, and we might also switch off. Sure, we understand these better, and if we are able to yeah, have more AI without AGI, who knows whether we reach AGI or whether these things just make us change our perception of it. Um, and maybe there are more possibilities. But certainly, there, people saw that there is a possibility we could reach swarm intelligence. And if we figure out better ways for human AI interface design, that shifts a bit away then from the classic human computer interaction design. Yeah, there's certainly things possible. There's also negatives, like with these growing possibilities, we have a growing attack surface
Yeah.
as well. And yeah, I don't know if you heard that in the UK, we just got the kind of annual crime reports. All crime down over the last decade.
Yeah.
That's not cybercrime. Cybercrime is
Oh.
rise. As expected. I mean, home working
Yeah.
policies, even criminals, right? Yeah. Right. So lots of technical possibilities that we have here. So we started, yeah, condensing our thinking also in a set of vision statements, quite provocative ones. And I thought I'll pick out only the top right quadrant from our rating. We looked at the aggregated vision statements across what everybody had contributed. Vision statements are things like, by 2035, robots will drive me home from the pub. That's kind of a vision statement, maybe not one for immersive learning, probably, but something else immersive, I think. Nevertheless, when we ran it through our multi-rounds of Delphi studies and aggregated them into these groups of vision statements, there were four that came out top that we considered desirable
Mhm.
and probable, where so probable is the axis up. So embodiment, sensation, expanded capabilities, and this well-being, wonder, and refusal to over-optimize came out quite likely and desired. And then still desired, but weren't quite sure whether likely were from course platforms to persistent immersive spaces and more creative power in the hands of educators and learners. And if we look at them a little bit more in detail, then we get a feeling of what these statements also says. So one day, immersive learning has more to do with the body than has been acknowledged. One day, students will beam remotely into the classroom, but with the same embodied experiment experience and things like that. And maybe for the other one, well-being, wonder, and the refusal to over-optimize it, I think, reflects a shift that we can already see for many years, but that will become ever so dramatic since the advent of AI. That in times where we can, with AI, create pervasive, polished, personalized pathways, education should focus on productive struggle. So exactly this great challenges where things do not work perfectly, where the productive struggle, the human side of the education brings out why we want to do this together
Mhm.
and stands out against polished AI personalization that we can have everywhere, where one provider and another provider would become completely indistinguishable, or one educational offer on some side of the planet becomes completely indistinguishable from somewhere else. And I like that. I like that this is a good, strong vision, I think. With the other two, creative power in the hands of learners, one day, generative world models allow educators without any computer science background to create rich and powerful experiences. One day, learning management systems, or as we say in the UK, virtual learning environments, will be replaced by educational metaverses. So these are pretty strong statements that are desirable from our perspective.
Mhm.
Whether they happen, we don't know. It depends on whether they put the effort and the funding behind them, I think. Couldn't you relate to that? I'm sure you can.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, these are things that we're going to have to navigate together. We're going to have to stand together, or someone's going to have to be the champion for these things. They won't just happen on their own based on pure market demand. Um,
Mm,
so yeah,
yeah.
it's an interesting dialogue space for us. Yeah.
Depends a bit on how we put them together, what we focus on. So we looked at these things like these drivers of change that we already see today, these inflection points, the potential futures we could have, the demand we have for it, the vision statements, and we started disaggregating them and pulling them together into future scenarios in one of the Delphi rounds. And here's an insight, persuasive insight that we did our homework there. So you can see how we went through all these, worked on them, aggregated them into future scenarios, and then into themes, and looked at the themes as well to assess which ones could have this lighthouse character. Just to pick a summary of those five future scenarios that we saw, they're probably best described with these pictures. So there's a good chance that we really will get an educational metaverse where we co-create our digital future in global communities.
Mhm.
There is a chance, quite pragmatically, that this will just be routine, blended hybrid use with all the other things we're familiar with. So
Yep.
one of many that fit together. There is, however, also a danger that we could create extractive systems through immersive learning that fall into this automation abyss, as Eric says. There is a chance, yeah, and that's more positive again, that we empower end users, that these technologies can be generated and assembled at ease very quickly, seamlessly, and XR's the visibility of it steps a bit more in the background as the technology becomes commoditized. Um, yeah, and there is also this vision of more open, more open agency, more joyful, immersive as evidence, and inclusive, a more inclusive world that we could create. So not quite sure which of these we will realize. Is it the bleak one with the automation abyss, or is it the pragmatic ones, or is it the ones where we really can make a difference compared to how it is today? Um, we will see. It really depends on what effort we put behind it. So the final bit, that's what everyone, I think, from a research perspective tonight has been waiting for. What are the 10 big strands that we see for immersive learning? And they're probably a bit much to digest, but when we walk through them one by one, I think we can relate with all of them. I think there is a strong strand on embodied cognition. Whether you want to label that slightly differently, it doesn't matter, but this acknowledgement of cognition has to do with the way we perceive things. Cognition is not independent of our bodies. On the contrary, intelligence is something that is very deeply rooted in embodiment. Is a good research area, I think, in which there is still a lot of unresolved potential.
Mhm.
Uh, the possibility to create immersive assessment that is much more focused on performance, on yeah, robust evidence of learning gains, and yeah, how we can leverage then process level performance-based data for it is, I think, a great strand. This marriage between AI and XR for the purpose of immersive learning, intelligent immersive learning, maybe as a title, is a great area.
Mhm.
Um, the SSH perspective of transfer, ecological validity, what conditions need to be there for specific things to work, for methodologies to lift off, for yeah, immersive learning technology to become used. Multimodal learning analytics and the ethics related to that. Um, Immersion without exclusion as a special focus. XR accessibility for learning. How can we leverage the potential advantages of these systems to be even more inclusive than any of the web accessibility we had in the past, because we can map this to so many more senses than
Right.
just text in front of you or sound or a video image. um, is going to be exciting. Learners as world builders, we spoke about that already a little bit. Social learning, large gains to be made. Um, the the lifespan impact of XR learning and needs definitely more study. There should be a shift to more longitudinal studies to complement the pointwise interventions that we mostly see these days.
Mhm.
And this invisible XR and ambient infrastructures could be another focus. So we also did here an additional analysis. We looked at, so which of these give us a silent velvet revolution, an evolution,
Yeah.
and which of these could be disruptive. When they appear, it changes everything. And which of these we think are currently kind of well equipped with what's written down into the next 5 years funding programs, and which of these have an issue. So we could achieve real breakthroughs, but we're not funding them enough. So for any of you funders listening to this recording, this is the stuff you want to pay special attention to. Um, Whether that's to validate that you're already funding the right things or whether there are gaps that need your attention. So if we look at them, then we can see, so we're already a little bit on the way for social XR, and we're doing work for the transfer of ecological validity. And in the programs, what's set up here, we deem as probably going to get us somewhere. We're not so sure about embodied cognition. And for anything below here, this axis,
Mhm.
immersion without exclusion, maybe not even achievable, the ambient invisible XR infrastructures, but definitely progress that could be made here to make it less invisible. People in the workshop said, yeah, we heard this promise over and over again over the last 2 decades that this fades in the background and it is just working. And we're not
Self-assessment.
quite there, but there's more progress that can be made in that.
Mhm.
And especially with the impact analysis, there's definitely the funding, even the funding models missing for this, in my opinion. Yeah,
Yeah.
multimodal is could could fit nicely into what we have without disrupting business as usual too much, enabling it, but is not sufficiently funded. And yeah, we can see the other ones. Yeah, that's I think what we have so far. That gives a good overview, I think, over the whole picture. And maybe if I can round this all up with some small message and advertisement. I went to our virtual production studio a while back and recorded this nice um, message here about the use of XR technology in learning, and maybe we just look at that for a second together. Augmented reality, virtual reality, extended reality. These technologies have reached the mainstream, and the media, mainstream or otherwise, is in constant discussion about whether the metaverse envisioned and created by big IT companies is flawed, oversold, lonely, misogynistic, or already even outdated. But if you move away from popular culture and focus instead on education, analysts are promising a revolution, a seismic shift in the way we learn. And if we borrow a few XR tricks from Hollywood, a seismic shift in the way we teach. Is it magic or just technology? How can we use this ever-advancing tech, not just for business or entertainment, but as a tool for education, for educators, for learners? There is already a whole spectrum of technologies out there, but what makers methodologies can be used for designing for learning with XR technologies like this immersive environment? And how do we assure quality? From the perspective of the teacher, we have to consider suitable strategies for different sectors, be it higher or secondary education, colleges, commercial training, or the public sector. And it's not just about being an educator. It is about providing the right context from the ISS to a hospital or wherever you need to be to gain the skill directly applicable to your practice. So, welcome along. As you make your way, I invite you to reflect on how you would adapt these possibilities to your own needs. Be creative, but be practical. Think about how you would get the most out of the technology available and how learning can be brought into a new age. Yeah, that concludes a bit what I wanted to share.
Very nice.
Here, shameless self-advertisement. If you're interested in our continuing professional development program, just Google HG087 and you will find a course that you can sign up for. Right.
Fantastic.
Over to you. Thank you.
There's some credentials for Fridolin there on the slide. It'll be also on YouTube when we post that. Thank you so much. That was fantastic. Really got me excited. I want to attend Open University. That's got to check out your lab, man. That's really cool.
You're always welcome. You're always welcome.
Eric Hawkinson had a question. What would be your best pitch to get funding for a longitudinal impact study? I thought I'd throw that question out to you while I get my slides going.
Yeah, fabulous, Eric. Yes, I think for me the key argument is around well-being. So when we're studying the impact lifelong use of immersive learning has on us in all dimensions, digital well-being, cognition, bodily impact, then that's completely understudied. We have no clue. It's like repeating the mistakes of past technology revolutions over and over again. When we invented the keyboard and the monitor, nobody had a viewpoint on ergonomics, and now we're sitting there with broken backs, broken necks, broken hands, and you know that the mouse arm is a recognized illness for software developers. It's a professional illness that you get by operating the mouse too much.
Right.
Carpal tunnel. It has a specific name. And so if we don't study the impact of lifelong use of these technologies, we cannot develop models that will assure we have a good life. and a good quality of life, and are not medically dependent, and wearing our bodies down in ways they're not designed for. And that's just speaking now of the direct economic effects. And if we're considering the social impact, the psychological impact, then longitudinal is what we need to look at.
Yeah, good answer. And if I might add, just with a pitch to iLRN, Eric and everyone else, on these longitudinal studies, we'd really like to create more of a stable, continuous chain of change as these platforms change, as learner expectations change, as the technology changes, as research methodologies change. We want to work together in this open society of immersive learning research to capture and the knowledge and the context of the things that we're researching in time, so that we could work forward and capture these moments around the world and across time, so that we could better understand these longitudinal impacts and decisions. Of course, methodologies are going to be, put into place for specific longitudinal studies looking at particular kinds of things, and those are great. We need those, but we want to be able to also serve kind of the world with all of its complexity, and so our single source documentation system that we've just begun to stand up for iLRN, our codex, as we're calling it. We'd really like to have researchers and others to help us to capture these moments as we go forward. And of course, the Illuminators Forum and other aspects of the State of XR and Immersive Learning Report is helping to sense make these moments in time. Such as Fridolin's great presentation and the work of the Circle of Scholars. So multiple variables, I think, going on in creating successful longitudinal understanding of what XR is doing across time. But it's a great conversation, and I'm hoping that you, Eric, and everyone else in our Circle of Scholars, as well as the greater community, will join us in these kinds of conversations and innovation. So to follow up and wrap up our Illuminators Forum discussion today is the translation. So we've got these great ideas, we have challenges, we have systems going on, but what can we do for that Vision 2035, and how can we move towards creating that vision, co-creating that vision together? And there's a couple of things here is that volumetric capture moving into the mainstream. Um, there's there's some initial signals that the sports world is is taking volumetric capture out of rooms and into real time. And also this news that everyone in our industry in our sector has been talking about, that the metaverse, this idea that Meta, the company, uh, stood up as hype, but also really pushing um, money and attention into this space. That's cooling as the technology and the socio cultural aspects move forward. Um, and we're moving more towards this ecosystem pragmatism. So it's not really what we believe, it's what we would like to have to change in order for these visions for 2035 to become real. So Arcturus, the company, has raised seed money to bring volumetric capture out of the room and into real-time 3D play through live sports workflows. And they've raised this money in seed investment. Um, but if the volumetric is becoming more routine and more dynamic, what kind of evidence forms will the immersive learning field need to start thinking about accepting beyond papers and videos and capture within the specific environment, we want to be able to compare, critique, and improve the experiences that our learners are engaged in. So once those pipelines stabilize, what will we do next? And so that's a good way of kind of transferring our thinking into where we might meet this 2035 vision. Another thing that you're really seeing a lot of people are talking about is the digital twin, right? We've seen that over the last, 5 to 6, 7 years. And that's a maturing idea. There's a University of, I think it was Central Florida, had a great digital twin conference with lots of sponsors and work where they're being able to represent these real systems with a great amount of fidelity. And you can look through the simulation that's fed with data. Um, and strong in the engineering fields, manufacturing, and in facilities and operations. But you're now also looking at ways that AI is starting to create these world models. So, looking at streams of data fed by AI that are creating these representations of entire environments or worlds. And it's designed for simulations, for learning, also for planning and decision making. So you can see world model being used pretty well as agentic AI used for environmental scanning. So this the sense making and the Illuminators forum and the futures studies that we're engaged in to monitor the horizon, you can see how agentic AI and um, these kinds of ideas can be applied towards envisioning possible, probable, and preferable futures. So there's really interesting things going on in that space. And then just one final um, you know nod to Meta, who has done a great amount of effort, poured billions of dollars into this space, and really changed the trajectory of what's happening with immersive learning. You're starting to see this idea of the metaverse cooling and these move towards pragmatic ecosystems of federated, maybe different platforms kind of working together. And it's really becoming more about the cluster of different platforms that you're working, standards that you need to abide by for inclusion or interoperability, and really focusing on sort of boring reliability and making sure that those things are working within your particular ecosystem. So the question's not becoming, where's the metaverse? Oh, we've lost sort of that original vision that was stood up, what 4 years ago or so. But what parts of immersive learning are ready to become infrastructure? How do we make those things part of our ecosystems, scale with these kinds of standards where we can assess with reliability and use different kinds of tool sets to make them work for us in an operable, reliable way for all learners? So that's kind of where we're going, and I think Meta is a partner and player that's going to continue to be a part of that. They may have laid off 10% of their workforce, but they still have 90%, and it's like 220,000 workers are still in that division. So um, not to be Pollyanna-ish, but I think there's still some hope there for us to have. So what do we build next? This platform churn, this moving from one platform to another as uh, industry continues to invest in AI, as certain kinds of VR platforms or XR platforms rise and then sunset. Um, we need that. This really exposes quite a bit of risk, and we want to emphasize this call that educators and people who are looking to do good in the world, we're having a call for working together to stabilize some of these things and help work together. because nothing reliably is yet holding this immersive learning knowledge together that we can share year after year. We need this evidence that works and be able to strategically communicate it to these various audiences. And we need to be able to practice together when these kinds of platforms and technologies shift, not just die off, but also change and go forward rapidly. So we'd like to highlight that call for us to work together as a species, as a set of organizations to do that. So tangentially, you can see worldwide that open science has matured actually faster than the immersive learning discipline, and that these adjacent fields are building norms for transparency, even though the results are kind of messy, unevenly applied. Immersive learning is really struggling to make experiences inspectable and comparable beyond demos. And we're really calling for us as a discipline, as a multidisciplinary uh, uh, group, to create, embrace these principles of open science, make use of the tools and the groups that are popping up around the world, and develop standards that we can reproduce results and compare immersive learning outcomes across different platforms in a way that really makes sense. And we want to do this in the service of humankind. So we want to go beyond showcases and case studies um, to inspectable kinds of systems in a way that makes sense. So there's a great amount of cognitive overhead around some of these things. There's a lot here to correlate, but we really think that together we can really make this happen. So if immersive learning becomes adopted um, as an open science uh, effort, and we take these kinds of norms seriously, what will we need to do together to expose certain kinds of assumptions, to examine different sorts of evidence and compare and contrast them for learners' benefit? And how do we take the failures of different platforms, of different learning efforts, and how do we not expose those as failure per se, but iterate forward so we can learn from those failures and develop together? So those are some of the questions that we would like to leave you with before we open up the floor. I wanted to give a pitch to our Immersive Learning Research Network's 12th annual conference coming up online June 14th and 15th, and in person in Athens, Greece at National and Kapodistrian University of Athens, June 27th through the 30th. Registration's about to open soon, and our theme is on becoming an open society for immersive learning, going beyond simple research and practice based, but how do we really start to serve sort of these open science and open society um, ideals? So next Friday we have another Illuminators forum that we are cooking up. We don't have we're not ready to announce that yet, but that is what we have for you. And Fridolin, I want to thank you once again for coming on as our special guest. You did a fantastic job putting on that workshop and for orchestrating today's discussion. So thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.